Policy Order 109. This is personal for me. As a Black American, I've seen how racist state-sanctioned violence devastates and quite literally rips apart both communities and human beings. 2 years ago, I was in Palestine, in East Jerusalem, and I've personally witnessed Israeli apartheid forces conducting raids on Palestinian villages, into the villages like Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, where decades of Israeli dispossession has threatened the Palestinian people. And I've seen the Palestinian people's unrelenting compassion and resistance. I promised then that I would work to end the horrors that they experienced, which are enabled by US companies and taxpayers. I know that global justice is our local responsibility. It is that or nothing. Now it's up to you to live up to your duties by putting forward this motion and ending the contracts implicitly with HP. Thank you.
Itamar, and then Sharon Small.
Hello, my name is Itamar Turner-Troring. I live at 139 Oxford Street. I'm here to speak in support of the resolution and policy order involving stopping contracts with companies doing business with supporting Israel's occupation of Palestine. And I do so as both a Jew and grew up in Israel and still has family living in Israel. I've heard some opponents about this as singling out Israel, and I find it a little confusing, since just because one country is being asked to do better does not mean we're not asking others, and the city council has on many occasions spoke support of other causes. And also I'm excited to see projects for moving the police away from militarized policing, and hope you will pass those as well.
Next up, Sharon Small.
Mayor Siddiqui, Rabbi has joined us from a different computer to see if this works this time. I will unmute Rabbi.
Okay, and then we'll go to Sharon. Rabbi.
Rabbi, you just need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay, so now you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, you can go ahead.
We can hear you, Rabbi. Please go ahead.
I don't think you can hear us.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but I don't think you can hear us. Maybe we can figure out what's happening, and then go to and then go back. And then after Sharon, it's Amal Wishera.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Hello, my name is Sharon Small, and I live at 21 Kelly Road. I'm here tonight to urge the City Council to oppose Policy Resolution 109. This resolution treats a complex conflict with a painful history as a one-sided issue. It polarizes the narrative of the conflict, and by doing so, it creates additional barriers to peace. For example, this resolution doesn't mention the actions of Hamas, a recognized terrorist organization that uses humanitarian aid to launch rockets at civilian populations. Please vote against this resolution. Thank you.
Next up, we have Amal Bashara, followed by Christopher Schmidt.
Amal has not joined. Christopher Schmidt, please go ahead.
Thank you. Christopher Schmidt, 17 Laurel Street. I'm a member of the City Manager Task Force to examine the future of public safety in Cambridge, and wanted to comment briefly tonight on the two related proposals on the agenda tonight related to public safety. I believe these proposals, the Hart proposal and the task force report, are clear in their goals. They represent a consensus from both the task force and other Cambridge residents on moving forward with a non-police public safety alternative as expediently as possible. Within the task force and the Hart proposal, we see the same overlapping goals: as quickly as is practical, move interactions between the public and the city away from the police in all cases not involving violence. I have participated directly in both efforts, and I think that we all agree there is, right now, an opportunity to move forward with public safety in a way that we can make Cambridge a leader, demonstrating our commitment to equity and justice as we move forward in creating a better city for all of us. I also wanted to encourage you to pass the proposed changes to the NCD Ordinance Committee.
Next up, we have Justin, followed by Dalia.
Justin Safe, 259 Hurley Street, East Cambridge. First, I support the public safety reform proposals. Second, on the petition to modernize the Neighborhood Conservation District Ordinance, the original sponsor, David Sullivan, provided input, and I think we have arrived at a good balance and ask that you pass it to ordinance. The goals of the NCD petition are straightforward. We seek to increase the threshold to begin an NCD study to less than 1/10 of 1% of the population of Cambridge, 100 residents. We also seek to have City Council approve NCD studies at the outset, rather than waiting a year before elected officials have any opportunity for involvement on behalf of your constituents. We seek to include important city goals that the ordinance currently does not address, including diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and affordability in all city neighborhoods. Keeping in mind the housing supply and cost crisis, we eliminate the conflict between the NCD ordinance and the affordable housing overlay, and we exempt climate resiliency and renewable energy features, and we provide for a periodic review to involve new generations of neighborhood residents. Thank you.
Please, next is Dalia Leibowitz, followed by David Roth.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, Dalia.
Hi, my name is Dalia Leibowitz. I live on Western Avenue, and I've been a Cambridge resident for almost 9 years. I oppose policy order number 109, and I urge the council to oppose it as well. Over the past few years, there have been quite a few anti-Semitic incidents in the greater Boston area. The BDS movement is linked to anti-Zionism and a rise in anti-Semitism. As a Jewish American with American Israeli parents, I believe that this policy order will contribute to making Cambridge a city known for its tolerance and interest in diversity, like a physically, emotionally, and psychologically unsafe environment for Jewish Americans and Israelis. Thank you.
We're going to try Rabbi once more and then go to David Roth.
Great. This is Rabbi Yoni Shtiebel. I'm an MIT researcher, and I live in Central Square in Cambridge. I support and endorse the approach of President Biden in two areas: condemnation of violence against ethnic groups in the United States, whether Asian, Muslim, or Jewish, working quietly with allies to address our mutual concerns with mutual respect. This is handled at the presidential level and behind closed doors, as it should be. I'm concerned that BDS at the local and congressional level will make many Jewish people uncomfortable as a means for expression of hatred against and or ethnic group, and it further negatively impacts Arab citizens of Israel and impedes positive, constructive problem solving. Israel has prioritized vaccinations for its Arab citizens. Doctors and nurses treat Israelis, both Muslims and Jews. Israel reached peace treaties with Arab countries such as UAE, and Israeli Arabs have been empowered to decide what government will be in Israel. Peace starts here. Thank you.
Next up, we have David Roth and then Aicha Belabbes.
Hello. I'm Rabbi David Roth. I have lived in Cambridge for 13 years. I live at 13 Marie Avenue. I'd like to end by telling you that what seems like a normal piece of civic activity, sharing my name and address, has become something dangerous. Sharing my address publicly in the context of extreme attacks on Israel and on Jews makes me afraid for my safety and that of my family. I have lived in countries where it was not safe to be visibly Jewish, and I have been personally warned not to wear clothing which would make me a target. Unfair attacks on Israel, singling out the Jewish state as a uniquely villainous country deserving of condemnation, makes peace harder, not easier to achieve, and leads again and again to the singling out of Jews for violence. Please do not allow our city to be weaponized for one side of a complex and tragic conflict. I ask that my city not choose to align itself with forces that both undermine chances of peace and put the lives of my family and community
in danger. Thank you for your testimony, David. I want to remind folks that if your hands are up, we're going to you in the order that you've signed up, so you don't have to raise your hands. A lot of people are raising hands, but we're going you know, we're trying to go in the order that folks signed up. So Aicha, we'll go to you next, and then Rami Mangubi. Aicha, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. I just got the unmute. Hi, my name is Aicha. I've lived in Cambridge since I was 7 years old. I'm a member of Cambridge Democratic Socialists of America, and I'm a supporter of the community organizations, Muslim Justice League, and BDS Boston. I'm here to ask the council to vote yes on Policy Order 109 and Policy Order 114 in support of the HEART program. The oppression of Black folks in the United States and in Israel, and the oppression of Palestinians in the Israeli state are deeply interconnected, as the same tactics are used on both populations, and U.S. police are trained by Israeli police, and Israeli police train U.S. police. It goes vice versa. These two police systems are deeply interconnected, and so we need to support both policies of legislation that will protect and support marginalized communities. Thank you.
Rami, you're next, and then Sarah Wilson.
My name is Rami Sabit Mangubi. I'm a Jewish refugee from an Arab country who came to the US as an immigrant seeking safety from persecution because of my faith, the Jewish faith, safety that is threatened by the BDS movement. Policy Order 2021, number 109, is a BDS-based resolution informed and bigotry toward the only Jewish majority state on the planet, and it endangered the safety of members of the Jewish community and other minorities everywhere in the United States. For the past 4 decades, I have been coming to work every day in Cambridge. We do not want this hatred imported into Cambridge. The council must totally reject this resolution. The resolution will inspire acts of violence where people are saying, kill Jews and rape Jewish women. And I have lived in countries where this happened. Please reject this resolution.
Next up, we have Sarah Wilson, followed by Jeremy Burton.
Jeremy Burton, please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Jeremy Burton. I live on Magazine Street. I'm here as a 10-year resident and as the director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, the representative of the broad and diverse organized Jewish community of Greater Boston. Our 40 member organizations represent some 130 congregations across denominations, as well as civic, cultural, and advocacy groups covering a wide spectrum of views. As a resident, I would welcome our city having a human rights lens that is applied neutrally to all nations and all contracts. But the proponents of Order 109 have made clear that its adoption would be a victory for a global movement that seeks to eliminate the state of Israel. Therefore, the organized Jewish community, which serves 250,000 residents of Greater Boston, opposes Order 109 and its singling out of the one Jewish state. Finally, we want to thank those who honored our community's request for religious accommodation at last week's hearing and for allowing more residents of Cambridge to participate tonight in this discussion. Thank you.
Harvey Tooch, followed by April Mendez.
Harvey, if you can please sign out of the Zoom and rejoin with, you need to update your Zoom, your version, and when you come back in, please just raise your hand and we'll call on you.
April Mendez, followed by Maria Lesbetnik.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, April.
Okay. Hi, my name is April. I live at 56 Year Street. I'm commenting in favor of Policy Order 109 regarding terminating the city's contract with Hewlett-Packard and other companies complicit in violations of Palestinians. Palestinians are asking for international support and solidarity. By continuing to work with these companies, Cambridge continues to make possible the oppression and violation of human and civil rights in Palestine and in the US. As a daughter of 2 Mexican immigrants, it is incredibly hurtful to reside in a city that financially supports contracts with companies which directly assist prisons, police, and ICE in tracking and detaining folks who deserve nothing but love, kindness, and respect. We continue to allow for the discrimination and violence against individuals. I urge the City Council to pass Policy Order 109, as well as to continue to identify ways to actively end violence against BIPOC folks, both in the US and abroad. Thank you.
We will go to Maria Lezemnik, followed by Yael Megan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak against Policy 109. My name is Maria Lazebnik. I have worked in Cambridge for a number of years. I'm a former senior research fellow at Harvard University. Currently, I'm an adjunct professor at Bent University. I'm an American Jew, and I'm a mother of 3 children. I came to this country as a refugee to escape anti-Semitism in the former Soviet Union. I'm all familiar with anti-Semitism on the government level. It's hard to believe that I'm witnessing the same kind of anti-Semitic agenda on the legislative level in the city of Cambridge, United States of America. The motivation for proposing this policy is wrong. Israel was under attack from Hamas that wants to wipe out the Jewish state. Israel has a right to defend itself. My loved ones were under constant rocket attack. I've heard the first-hand account of pogroms and synagogues being burned by Palestinian mob. I spent the last week worried about my relatives' well-being and the future of all Jewish people in the world.
Thank you for your testimony, Maria. Sorry, everyone has a minute. Yael Megan, followed by No Tanner.
Yael, unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, I'm Yael Megan, and I am here to oppose agenda item 129 and 109. I am an American, and I have seen all this propaganda that has been done lately, and words such as apartheid and genocide are factually wrong. Further, there is only one Jewish state in the world, only one place where the Jews can live under their Jewish law and under Jewish government. And that is the only country that people are trying to boycott. We have horrendous social rights violations in China, and yet nobody's trying to boycott China. We have horrendous violations in other countries, and nobody's trying to boycott those countries. There is only one country in the world that people are trying to boycott, and that is Israel. And that is the only Jewish state in the world. And the only reason that they're trying to boycott is anti-Semitism. This is discriminatory, and this is against our Constitution.
Naomi Tanner, followed by Jesse Lempel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I've been a Cambridge resident for about 6 years, and I'm Jewish, and I oppose the policy orders because of the corrosive effect that they've already had on our city. And if you don't believe me, just look at the display for this Zoom meeting. Normally, the addresses of the participants are displayed, and I can't say I know for sure why the decision was made to hide the public comment display. But after watching the recent violence towards Jews in America, violence stemming from the very same demonization embedded in this policy order, I'm worried revealing my address and being targeted. And I can tell you, I'm not alone. And let me just be clear. This policy order, this is not inclusion, this is justice, this is not the Cambridge I have known, nor the Cambridge in which I would want to live. And to the council, I ask very simply, you see that empty slot, please fill that empty slot with empathy, and please stand up for your neighbors. Thank you.
Jesse Lempel, followed by JJ Kimchi.
Hello, my name is Jesse Lempel, and I'm a Cambridge resident and a graduate of Harvard Law School. I am also a grandchild of Holocaust survivors. I oppose the policy orders under consideration. I think the proposed policy orders are grossly one-sided and unfair. In fact, I don't even think they're trying to be fair. What message does it send when the city of Cambridge does not even try to be fair toward Israel? Ironically, adopting these resolutions will only strengthen the case for Israel's existence as the world's only Jewish state. Because who else can Jews count on when the hour of need? Will it be the city of Cambridge? I don't think so. Thank you.
JJ Kimchi, followed by Jackson DeVito.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is JJ Kimchi. I'm a Cambridge resident, and I would like to speak in firm opposition to this proposal of boycotting Israel. In these past weeks, the world's largest Jewish community suffered a deluge of over 4,000 missiles fired by Hamas, a genocidal, anti-Semitic terror group bent on murdering all Jews everywhere. At the same time, there's been a 500% increase in anti-Semitic attacks in Europe and most especially in the United States. To introduce BDS at this time tells the world that Cambridge, Massachusetts sides with the anti-Semites, that it joins in the project of the destruction of the Jewish state, this time by economic means, and that it wishes to punish Jews for defending themselves. Does Cambridge really wish to medieval Christian persecutors and Nazi Germany in their boycott of Jews, declaring to the world that it is okay to single out Jews for punishment and abuse? If you consider a friend of the Jewish people, if you are interested in defending your Jewish minority, I ask you, please reject this poisonous proposal. Thank you.
Jackson DeVito, followed by Manashem Altin.
Hi there, my name is Jackson Davidow, and I'm a longtime Cambridge resident and community member. Though I'm living in North Grafton at this precise moment, I'm excited to be moving back to Cambridge in July. I urge you to vote yes on Policy Order 109 to cut ties with HP until the company stops its shameful profiting from the oppression and destruction of Palestinians. I also wish to voice my support of Policy Order 114, which will make Cambridge a safer space for Black and Brown members. I am speaking as the Jewish American who has spent significant time in Israel-Palestine, where I have witnessed firsthand the unbelievable horrors, human rights violations, and architectures of death that Palestinians face every day. As a Jew, I also want to underscore that anti-Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism, and it is extremely dangerous to suggest that this is so. To support BDS is not anti-Semitic.
Manashem Altin, followed by Julie Altman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Menachem Altin at Pearl Street, resident of Cambridge. I'm speaking up in opposite to Policy Order 109. Quite simply, we can talk about the fact that the UN has confirmed that Hamas puts rockets in its schools and uses civilians as shields, but this is not what this is about. This is simply about the city of Cambridge. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. The one-sided rhetoric, such as that stated in council last week, that this is not a two-sided conversation, is a direct attempt to shield and exonerate Hamas from its complicity in what's taking place, that endorses the policy that Hamas has, that states explicitly, kill all Jews. So it's a very simple question. If you insist on a one-sided rhetoric, you're inviting that type of hate into this city, into this community. Jews in LA and in New York are being hunted and chased. And right here, I am being very abused in the streets of Cambridge because I am Jewish. Please don't help that.
Julie Altman, followed by Mark Mogay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. My name is Julie Altman. I live on Hubbard Park Road. My husband and I have been residents of Cambridge for 30 years. We went to school here. We work and own businesses in Cambridge. We have raised 4 children here who are all residents. I am here to condemn BDS. I oppose the policy order number 109. The reference to Hewlett-Packard, which is not a Cambridge vendor, is in reality a smear campaign against Israel, implying things that are untrue. I find that the hardest blows are the ones coming from the closest range, and these blows are coming from some city council members and those on this call. Everyone deserves respect and human dignity. Your actions show us that you only respect people that you care about. Those constituents you don't care about are left unsafe. The level of anger and hate is over in Cambridge, and I have experienced it. Some are stoking this anger and refuse to acknowledge the consequences. Cambridge is not the sanctuary it pretends to be.
Thank you, Julie. Mark, followed by Liette Greenwood.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Siddiqui and members of the panel. My name is Mark Mulgay. I live on Mass Ave. I'm speaking in opposition to Policy Order 109. A friend sent me a photo of an advertisement from the side of a building in Israel yesterday from an insurance company. In huge letters in Hebrew and in Arabic, it said, "The best insurance against violence is coexistent." This is mostly correct. There is no prospect for peace between the river and the sea if the course continues as it has. As a course of action, BDS is nothing more but the same. It is an act of violence by non-physical means. It is unfortunate that proponents of actions like this one, under the guise of nonviolence, are neither creative nor courageous enough to seek real peaceful solutions to these tremendous problems. We tend to place much stock in political solutions, and especially political leaders who have their own motives to prolong and exacerbate conflict. My written statement that I sent last night to the members extends certain ideas. Would be very happy
for your testimony. Leah Greenwood, followed by Daniel Servati.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear me. My name is pronounced Liat. I live on Columbia Street here in Cambridge. I've always been very proud of my name. It's an Israeli name. It was the most popular name in Israel in the year that I was born, when I was born here in New York, before my family moved to Israel, and I'm a proud Israeli American. I live in Cambridge and I work as a registered nurse at Mass General Hospital. It's a really, really scary year and a half. A lot of my patients died of COVID. I worked as a COVID-19 nurse. Last year, over the holiday of Shavuot, my big fear was the patients in my care and that they would die. And this year, last week on Monday, over the holiday of Shavuot, my biggest fear was going to be what was happening at this meeting that I wasn't able to speak about. As I mentioned, I've always been proud of my name. But this week, when people asked me at the hospital where my name was from, I told them that I didn't know because I was afraid. I urge you to vote against policy items 129 and 109. Thank you.
Daniel Servati, followed by Keren Greenbaum.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hello, my name is Daniel Servati. I've been a long-term resident of Cambridge, a proud resident of Cambridge for more than 35 years. My children grew up here. They went to CRLS. I am on the board of the Friends of CRLS. I considered myself a very proud resident of Cambridge. I strongly oppose policy order number 109 because I don't want Cambridge to become a city that is divisive and negative. I think that Cambridge can do better than that, even though people claim that anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitism, but one leads to the other. And instead of Cambridge just following the crowd, I urge us to think of positive way to celebrate coexistence and maybe to sponsor a yearly forum where Palestinians and Israelis and Jews and Muslims will be invited under the sponsorship of Cambridge. I work for that. Reject 109.
Keren Greenbaum, followed by Noah Cohen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I live on Ellsworth Avenue in Cambridge, and I've lived here for over 10 years. I am opposed to the resolution asking to boycott Israel, the only Jewish country in the world that has been singled out by this resolution to be vilified, especially considering the countries we knowingly do business with that are involved in human rights violations. Labeling a country where Jewish and Arab citizens are afforded equal rights as apartheid is extremely inaccurate. Israel has actually offered Palestinians a state multiple times over the years, but to the disappointment of the Palestinian people, their leadership have refused. Israel even pulled all the Jews out of Gaza and handed over the land to have the people elect Hamas, who in their charter vowed to destroy Israel and murder Jews, and shoot tens of thousands of missiles funded by Iran over the years into Israel against international laws forbidding indiscriminate attacks on civilians. To view this complex conflict from only one angle is a disservice to all involved. I care about Palestinian rights and desire for a state, but I won't allow that to make me blindly accept the actions of Hamas and others.
Followed by Sanjay D'Souza.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Noah.
I live on Columbia Street in Cambridge, and I'm testifying in support of policy orders 109 and 114. The central crime of our age is colonialism. Under colonialism, Europeans carried out mass enslavement and genocide on every continent and built a world of immense inequality, a system of white supremacy. The most vicious form of that crime is colonial settlement, as practiced here by the State of Israel and South Africa, places with a long history of supporting each other and their policies of colonial violence and mass imprisonment. Policy Orders 109 and 114 are connected. Hewlett's technology for tracking, surveilling, and imprisoning racialized communities both here and in colonized Palestine serves to protect the system of white supremacy, the vicious enclaves of a dying colonialism. You can be on the side of those enclaves, or you can side with the rising tide against them. Those are the two sides. Your vote will tell us which side you are on.
We are going to go to Rabbi Leora Abelson, then Sanjay D'Souza.
Rabbi Abelson, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our voices tonight. My name is Leora Abelson. I'm the rabbi of a synagogue whose members live across the Boston area, including in Cambridge. I'm here to strongly encourage you to vote yes on Policy Order 109. BDS is not anti-Semitic. It can feel anti-Jewish. My ancestors helped build the state of Israel, and when your family is deeply connected to a place whose government claims to speak in the name of your people, criticism against that government feels personal. But BDS does not target Israelis or Jews as individuals. It targets companies and businesses that enable action and apartheid, and it's an essential strategy for nonviolent resistance. Hewlett-Packard makes money by serving systems of dehumanization and injustice. Cambridge should be proud to refuse to do business with them. How powerful that tonight you are considering two policy changes in service of taking money away from systems that harm people and moving it towards systems that protect and uplift people. I hope you will pass both.
Sanjay D'Souza, followed by George Abraham.
Hi, my name is Sanjay D'Souza. I'm a Cambridge resident on 22 Harris Street. I'm here to speak strongly in favor of Policy Orders 109 and 114. Both these policy orders are intertwined as they both attempt to tackle structures and tools of racist abuse, both by Israeli settler colonialists as well as the US police. And it has been very well documented that the Israeli military as well as immigrations and customs enforcement in the US use HP technology and services to enforce forms of segregation and tracking of particular ethnic groups. These systems have led to racial abuse of Palestinians as well as immigrants and people of color here in the United States. It is disingenuous on the part of City Council to only support one resolution and not the other, because the tools to propagate racism by both the internationally recognized Israeli apartheid regime, ICE, as well as the police in the United States are one and the same. I urge the City Council to vote yes on both these orders if you're truly committed to abolishing apartheid and investing in the community of its residents. Thanks.
We will go to George Abraham, followed by Isaac Altman-sagan.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is George Abraham, and I'm a Palestinian American living on Somerville Ave here at Harvard University and a professor at Emerson College. I'm here to speak strongly in support of Orders 109 and 114. As an engineer myself, I have witnessed how financially dependent tech industry has become on US military and Western empire. HP has always built and supplied the tools of oppression from ICE to the Israeli state. Yet, BDS gives us concrete, simple, and non-violent strategies to resist this occupation and the military-industrial complex writ large. Residents of Cambridge have nothing material to lose by implementing Order 109. Nothing, while Palestinians have everything to lose, their homes and their livelihoods. I hope Cambridge listens to its residents and does its part to stand on the right side of history. Palestinians' liberation is not implausible, but it is inevitable. Thank you all.
Isaac Altman-sagan, followed by Irene Mizrahi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Isaac. I'm a Cambridge resident living on 111 Foster Street. I would like to begin with the continued references to HB has no place in this conversation, simply not a Cambridge vet. With that being said, for many years now, I've been in active support of a two-state solution that would allow Palestinians and Israelis to live in peace and security. I've also been to Israel proper and the West Bank many times. I have personally participated in programs that support mutual understanding and reconciliation between Arabs and Jews, Palestinians and Israelis. With this background, I'm writing to express to you my opposition to measures coming before the City Council. Policy Order 109 is bad policy for Cambridge and will not help Palestinians and Israelis achieve the peace and self-determination that they deserve and desire. This measure is a poorly disguised attempt to make the city of Cambridge part of the BDS movement, a movement that does not recognize Israel's right to exist and, ironically, exacerbates the very conflict it purports to address. Please don't support these measures. They don't help the cause of peace in the Middle East, and they create a divisive and hostile climate here in Cambridge. Such things will also affect the reputation and economy of our city negatively.
Thank you. Irene Mizrahi, followed by Loren Crowe.
My name is Irene Mizrahi. I reside in Cambridge. We have submitted earlier today this letter opposing order number 109, signed by 250 Cambridge residents who wanted to testify today, but out of respect to the council members' time, chose to sign this letter in lieu of testifying.
Next up is
Irene. I think you may have inadvertently muted yourself. Unmute yourself, please.
No, I'm finished. Thank you.
Finished. Okay. Loren Crowe, followed by Nancy Murray.
Hi, my name is Loren Crowe. I live on Museum Way in East Cambridge. I'm one of the petitioners, Conservation District Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access petition, and I request that the council send it to the Ordinance Committee. Out of respect for tonight's agenda, we did not organize commentary. We'll be happy to collaborate with all comers as part of the Ordinance Committee process. As a member of the City Manager's Public Safety Task Force, the council has before it two proposals to build alternative departments to the police for a wide swath of services. As a member of the task force that wrote one of these proposals, I urge the council to support both. The Public Safety Task Force's proposal for a Department of Community Safety and the Black Responses proposal are virtually the same in terms of programs and services, which makes sense since both were based on the Cahoots program. The main takeaway for the council and the city is that there's broad community consensus that Cambridge should have a Cahoots-like program of our own. There clearly is enough support for ideas behind the proposals that the city could start laying a foundation upon which to build now. And thank you very much.
We will go to Nancy Murray, followed by Janet Zimmerman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Nancy Murray, and I've lived at 204 Erie Street for 26 years. I speak in favor of 109 as someone who has seen how HP biometric access control technology has fragmented the West Bank and turned the Gaza Strip into a closed prison. As former director of education for the ACLU, I campaigned against the NSA's warrantless wiretapping program and the expansion of ICE deportations, both undergirded by HP Enterprise Services and Technology. I also asked this council to support PO 129, urging the Massachusetts congressional delegation to stand with Representative Presley and endorse the McCullum Bill, HR 250. Our tax dollars should not be used for the military detention of Palestinian children. I urge members of this council and everyone listening to look at Salem and Human Rights Watch documenting Israeli apartheid practices. Thank you.
We will go to Janet Zimmerman, followed by Dana Sajdi.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, hi. I'm Janet Zimmerman. I live on Kirkland Street, and I oppose Policy Order 109 and 114, and I urge the council to do the same. I've been a tax-paying resident in Cambridge for over 40 years, and I resent the hijacking of my city government to support a political agenda which is at best controversial and at its core is anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and distorts the truth on the ground of what's really going on with Israelis and Palestinians. And I worry how this will affect the reputation of our city, as has been shared by many of our speakers already. Unfortunate for the council's members' good intentions to be so misguided as to adopt this distorted anti-Semitic, anti-Israel resolution under the cloak of progressive conscience. Hamas themselves oppose or violate their own human rights policies by using people as human shields and using humanitarian
Thank
funds.
you for your testimony. Dana Sajdi, followed by Noor Bobaki.
Hi, my name is Dana Sajdi. I'm Associate Professor of History at Boston College and resident of Cambridge of 153 Sherman Street. I have been living here for 13 years. I was born in the city of Nablus in the Palestinian occupied territories. I will keep very short. I will say, imagine the state of Massachusetts issues a law banning all women residing in Cambridge to ever use the McGrath-O'Brien Highway. The only people who are allowed to drive on the highway are the men of Somerville, who, by the virtue of their being men, somehow are able to appropriate land and sometimes displace some of the women. And the idea is that women only belong in Cambridge and don't belong to Somerville. If we keep on investing in industries that support Israel, we are not only segregating Rosa Parks on a bus, but we are not allowing her to get on the bus in the first place. So please, my fellow Americans, do not support.
Thank you, Dana, for your testimony. Noor Bobaki, followed by Roni Grader.
Mayor Siddiqui, Amal Bissara has joined. Can we call that name next?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I presented only last week regarding how Israel's military and surveillance system splits my family and endangers communities I love. I want to emphasize that Cambridge should divest from Israel's apartheid, today, which has been documented by Human Rights Watch as well as Israel's premier human rights organization, B'Tselem. Today, we see how Israel uses knowledge systems like that of HP against Palestinians. We see the death and destruction in Gaza that comes from so-called guided missiles. Today inside Israel, Israel's arresting hundreds of young activists, even as police officers supported and protected right-wing mobs as they destroyed Palestinian lives and property. These knowledge systems destroy lives. I'm also here as an anthropologist, expert, and Israeli citizen to clear up some basic facts. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. It's a just lie to equate the two. Anti-Semitism is a form of racism and a hate against my Jewish brothers and sisters. And we know that we are stronger when we fight these racisms to get anti-Black, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim racisms. Anti-Zionism is the criticism of a state that is choosing to define itself as a state that puts its Jewish citizens above its Palestinian citizens and residents.
And for those I have to cut off, you can email the council the rest of your remarks, since they're a minute for every person. So we'll go to Noor Bobaki, followed by Roni Grader.
Hello, my name is Noor Baalbaki. I live at 124 Glenville Avenue, and I serve patients in the Cambridge community. I'm here today to ask the council to unanimously vote yes on Policy Order 109 and Policy Order 114. Never in my life have I witnessed a more horrific month of Ramadan. My heart has been broken watching Palestinians lose their homes and whole families, knowing that U.S. tax dollars are funding this violence to the form of $3.8 billion a year. Cambridge has an ethical obligation to Palestinians to divest companies like Hewlett-Packard that uphold the violent occupation and invest in community alternatives to police here in the US, which have taken the lives of so many in the Black community. As a healthcare worker, it enrages me to know that the checkpoint system enabled by Hewlett-Packard results in so many Palestinians being unable to access the same time-sensitive, life-saving healthcare their neighbors accessed. Your religion, race, and documentation status should not dictate whether your infant survives your delivery or how fast an ambulance comes.
Thank you, Roni. The next step is Esti Pasternak, followed by Leora Jokol.
Next, we have Roni Grader.
Hello, I'm Ronnie Grader. I'm a resident of Cambridge. I'm a former Israeli IDF person, and in the last couple of weeks, I felt extremely uncomfortable living in Cambridge. I'm here to oppose the bill. I'll be happy to hear that this bill doesn't pass. Thank you.
Esti Pasternak, followed by Leora Jokol.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Esty Pasternak. I live on Athens Street in Cambridge. I'm also a history and politics teacher in the greater Boston area. I am vehemently opposed to both policy orders suggested here tonight in relation to Hewlett-Packard and in relation to supporting the tax cut to Israel. I find that both of these policies are very much rooted in hate and one-sidedness. And when I think about America and our usual policy, it's that we really try to find solutions and to include other people. Why don't, if supporting these resolutions, why don't we support something in favor of Palestinians or in support of Palestinians or in support of an agreement or solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? I'd like to perpetuate.
Naomi, was she done? We cut her off.
Sorry, SC, please continue. SC, you still have the floor. Please go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I guess I got cut off. I think my time was up, but I'm happy to speak more. I just said that I'd like to perpetuate a community where we endorse peace, not hatred and one-sidedness. Thank you.
Leora Joko, followed by Mordai Zarate.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leora Joko. I live in Third Square in Cambridge. I recently moved here from Israel, and I'm here to oppose Subject 109 and 114. I will feel very uncomfortable living in a city that supports BDS, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Next up is Amartey, followed by Lital Carmel.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Amartey Sarate. I'm a longtime resident of Cambridge at Frost Street. I am here in favor of Policy 109 and Policy 114. As a Mexican immigrant, I am against HP's complicity in aiding ICE in detaining and separating parents and children, as well as terrorizing our immigrant community. Furthermore, I am opposed to my taxpayer dollars funding Israeli apartheid and the stratified citizenship of Palestinians. I have witnessed firsthand how Palestinian refugees and Palestinian Israelis are treated by the Israeli state. If Cambridge supports human rights, we will set the example to divest from HP and instead invest in companies and programs that support our marginalized communities at home and abroad. Thank you.
We're going to Lital Carmel, followed by Michelle Baratz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lital Carmel. I'm here in my capacity as the Regional Director of the Israeli American Council. There are more than 30,000 Israeli Americans in our area. Many of them live and work in Cambridge. Many of them study or teach in one of Cambridge's world-renowned academic institutions. Looking at the current trends regarding Jew hatred and Israel hatred around the country, it is clear that the order before you today will be yet another step toward making Cambridge and Greater Boston an unwelcoming place for the Israeli immigrant community. Policy Order 109 will not only have an effect on current financial and academic ties with Israel, it will also fuel the dangerous atmosphere in which we are immersed in. It is orders like this that will bring a climate of violence, bigotry, and hate that much closer to home. We oppose Order 109.
We're going to Michelle Baratz, followed by Tashar Hersberg.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Baratz. I'm a Cambridge resident and I live at 14 Trowbridge Street in Harvard Square. I'm here tonight to oppose Policy Order number 109. This order, like many other BDS initiatives, focuses on delegitimizing Israel. BDS initiatives like this have been rejected by President Joe Biden, President Barack Obama, and governors from all 50 states. The precedent set by passing this order will tarnish the reputation of the city of Cambridge. Should this order pass, my wife and I would consider moving out of Cambridge so as not to be associated with anything connected to BDS. Thank you for your time this evening.
Next up is Sashar Hirschberg, followed by Rabbi Stern.
Hi, my name is Shahar Hirsch and I'm a student in Harvard Business School. I'm here to call the council to oppose for 109 and strongly, I'm so saddened by all of this conversation. I invite everyone, I live in 12 Soldiers Street Park, everyone who is maybe not educated enough to understand that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East which actually protects its citizens. I studied alongside Israeli Arabs in my undergraduate, and just to hear people call Israel an apartheid state is so wrong, and it just clearly misrepresents the actual state of affairs. I want to also just share with people that Israel actually has an Arab Supreme Court judge, and just again, echo my fellow people saying that this is anti-Semitism.
We're going to Rabbi Stern and then Marisa Velasquez.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Liza Stern. I've been a proud rabbi of Congregation Eitz Chaim in Cambridge for some 20 years. And I applaud the city of Cambridge, in particular the council, for all that you do to fight racism and injustice. I oppose this number 109 proposal because I think BDS is simply a bad idea. It's divisive, it polarizes. It implies that Israel is the bad guy here, and we all know this is a very complicated business going on over in the Middle East. I urge the council members to make all citizens of Cambridge proud by being a leader in exploring how to promote initiatives so that all Israeli citizens, Jewish, Arab, can move forward together. Be a change agent, encourage Palestinians and Israelis to communicate, get out of gridlock.
Next up is Marisa Velasquez, followed by Lisa Goldstein.
Marissa, if you can rejoin the Zoom, you need to update your Zoom version, then raise your hand when you re-enter.
Is Lisa next?
Lisa Gulasarian, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lisa Gulasarian and I live at 2 Ware. I'm here today to ask the council to unanimously support Policy Order 109 to end purchasing from HB because it's the right thing to do. To my fellow Cambridge residents who are Jewish, I hear your concerns and support your right to live and thrive. But I must affirm that PO 109 is not about anti-Semitism. I'm the great-granddaughter of Armenian genocide survivors, so I understand what it's like to be denied rights, to feel unsafe in your own home, to be punished for your justified resistance against violent aggressors hell-bent on erasing your existence. But I also know how hurtful it is when the media presents a conflict as one between 2 equal parties. We can't ignore the egregious asymmetry of military and economic power between well-armed Israeli forces and the meager defense of Palestinians living in terror. We can't contribute to relentless human rights abuses and race dehumanization by supporting a company that does that.
Followed by Laura Morsch, and then Adam Yari.
Laura Morsch is not on the Zoom. Adam Yari, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Adam Yari. I'm an MIT graduate student, and I urge you to oppose Policy Order 109 and 114. Last week, I was called a Nazi just for being an Israeli citizen. Ironically, it happened at the same day Jewish people were brutally attacked in LA just for being Jewish. As an Israeli Cambridge resident, I ask you, what message does this resolution send to me and my family? We cannot forget that every coin has two sides. Being the first US city to condemn Israel is not a badge of honor, but a mark of shame for being the first city to succumb to a unilateral view and fail to understand the complexity of the situation. To boycott is to hate and create barriers, taking us even further away from peace. I offer to work towards a better message, a message of hope. Cambridge has so much to offer to resolution of this conflict that does not include boycotts. Let's collaborate to bring hearts together, not drift them apart. Let's be pioneers of hope, not fuel the flame of hate. Let's do what best and tackle difficult problems together. I call you to object these unjust and hateful policy orders. Thank you.
So just wanted to remind folks, if your hand is raised, we're not going by hands. We have to go by the order folks have signed up. So our Naomi, who is working with me, will figure out who had signed on earlier and then he wasn't in the Zoom and is not in the Zoom. So we'll get to you in due time. We're going to go to Christina Sciorro, followed by Ben Sabbath.
Mayor Siddiqui, Harvey Tooch back. So can we call on them next?
Yes, go ahead, Harvey.
Hello. Good evening, Cambridge Council. My name is Harvey Tooch. On Center Street, I'm a long-term Cambridge resident, and I would like to state strong opposition to POR 109. This policy order fails the Jews of Cambridge like me by solely applying a BDS policy against companies that do business with Israel. At its core, the false equivalence of Israeli state policy with apartheid constitutes anti-Semitic libel. Criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic, as long as it is held to the same standards as other countries. This policy order fails this very basic test. It singles out Israel in a manner that is grossly disproportionate to its objective ranking in global human rights challenges. This policy order fails me personally. I have family in Israel, and I'm being told that their lives are less valuable and can be ignored and erased. The policy order makes me feel very unwelcome and unsafe as a resident of Cambridge. In the past few weeks, we've seen anti-Semitic violence across US cities. Cambridge, please do not import this violence and this hate by supporting pro-Palestinian activists and the BDS movement. Thank you.
I think Marissa Velasquez is back.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Marissa Velasquez. I live on 41 Atkin Street, and I'm a healthcare worker serving patients in the Cambridge community. As the daughter of a Dominican immigrant whose family left the DR as a result of ethnic and racial cleansing by a far-right government, I want to speak on the clear, necessary imperative to vote yes on policy orders 109 and 114 in order to divest ties from each company that continues to support and enable the ongoing oppression and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by the Israeli government and the continued oppression of BIPOC communities by ICE and the general policing industrial complex. There are no circumstances where the unilateral and indiscriminate targeting of any indigenous groups by the government in charge is ever justified, no matter which country that government currently represents. Continuing business with companies and institutions that directly enable the oppression of BIPOC folks in Israel and Palestine and the US makes the people of Cambridge directly complicit in this oppression. As a healthcare worker whose work is influenced by the ethos do no harm, there's only one clear, just answer, and it's not complicated. Vote yes on policy orders 109 and 114. Thank you for your time.
Is Jonah Steinberg next, or was it Christina Sciorro? I think it was Christina.
It is Christina.
We're going to Christina and then Jonah Steinberg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. So my name is Christina Sciutto. I live at 5 Frost Street. As the daughter of an immigrant and an individual who opposes apartheid and racism, I'm here in solidarity with Palestinian immigrants to ask the Council to unanimously vote yes on Policy Order 109 and 114. As others have mentioned, HP Enterprise is the exclusive provider of computers and titanium servers to facilitate the murder of Palestinians in Gaza and maintain dangerous biometric data. I've also learned tonight that it helps facilitate deportations by ICE. Please sever this contract. Thank you much.
I think we'll go to Ben Sabbath next.
Right, sorry, Mayor Siddiqui, Ben and Munib. So Ben Sabbath.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ben Sabbath. I'm a Jewish resident of Cambridge and a former resident of Cambridge and current employee of Harvard University. I'm here to speak in favor of Policy 109, and I'll be reading the testimony of Susan Eskovitz. My name is Susan Eskovitz, and I am a former resident of Cambridge, currently residing in Brookline. I am Jewish, I am a mother and a grandmother. Cambridge has been at the forefront of several important human rights issues, and now is the time to stand up for Palestinian rights. What you do on this occasion will determine your place in history for many years to come. Not repeat what you already have heard over and over again about the egregious crimes that HP enterprise commits both in Palestine and in the US. Rather, I will implore you as a human being to recognize that Palestinians are human too. They want and deserve, as we all do, freedom, justice, and equality. If you do not start the ball rolling for them, who will? Thank you.
Naomi, who's next?
Munib El Khatib, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Munib El Khatib. I live on Trowbridge Street, right near Cambridge Hospital. I'm the son of Palestinian refugees who was born in Cambridge Hospital and grew up in Cambridge. I love the city very much, which is why it's so important to me Policy Order 109 passes. Cambridge has a history of standing up for human rights. Cambridge stood up against apartheid in South Africa in the 70s. It declared itself a sanctuary city in 1985. It stood up against human rights abuses in Central America in countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, and Haiti in the 90s. It took a principled stand against MIT's complicity in Saudi violence against Yemen in 2018. So Israel hasn't been singled out historically by Cambridge. Currently, Palestinians are oppressed and discriminated by its military. And by passing Policy Order 109, Cambridge will be honoring and upholding a proud tradition of in the struggle for global justice for the peoples of Palestine, as well as for immigrants and incarcerated people in the US. Thank you.
We're going to Jonah Steinberg and then Matya Sachster.
It looks like we may have lost Jonah. So Jonah, when you come back, please raise your hand and we'll call on you again.
So we'll go to
He's here now. 1 second. Jonah's back.
Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. This is Rabbi Jonah Steinberg.
Rabbi, go ahead.
Am I audible? I keep unmuting myself, but it gets muted again.
No. Let's restart the clock.
Okay. Am I unmuted?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Rabbi Jonah Steinberg, a Jewish chaplain at Harvard, director of Harvard Hillel, speaking against Policy Order 109 and Resolution 129. Honorable City Council members, wouldn't it be wonderful if it could be all our fault? We Jews, we Cantabrians, we Americans, because then we could wake up tomorrow morning and solve the whole problem ourselves. But that is not the story of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and not an effective way to engage from afar. Israel was born amid boycotts and embargoes, including the withholding of US military aid, and not only flourished, but developed a keen instinct for following its own star. Proponents of boycott, divestment, and sanctions are making the argument of Israel's harshest hardliners that Israel must always demonstrate overwhelming strength as it may have to stand alone. I am now concerned most of all for the young people who live and learn in this city who are connected with Israel, and they are many. I have seen in this city hostility fomented toward no other ethnic, national, or religious group as I have seen directed at the people of Israel, that is to say, my people.
We will go to Matya and then Kathy Pemberton.
Mayor Siddiqui, we have Aiden Shaman first.
Go ahead, Aiden.
Hi. My name is Adin Shmoman in mid-Cambridge, and I urge the council to vote against Policy Order 109 and BDS. I've heard some folks talking about how 109 is not anti-Semitic, but let's look at last week's call. Regarding rescheduling the comments on this issue due to a Jewish holiday, a city councilor who proposed 109 said, "I appreciate that it was a Shavuot holiday, but last week it was Eid. that didn't seem to prevent the Israeli government from bombing and evicting and terrorizing the Palestinian people. This is blatantly anti-Semitic behavior. To spell it out clearly, the counselor stated that because I am a Jew, my voice did not deserve to be heard in the city where I've lived for over a decade because of actions of the Palestinian state, of the Israeli state. Observant Jews are forbidden from using electronic devices on holidays, which means that because the pandemic has forced these meetings to be Zoom calls, I was quite literally not permitted to attend the last meeting, and the counselor was okay with that. For those counselors inclined to vote for 109, think about the company you keep in singling out the Jewish state and the Jewish people. And vote against 109 and keep Cambridge an open and accepting community. I would also recommend censuring said counselor for their anti-Semitic comments last week. I quite frankly didn't believe it until I saw the video about 5 hours and 40 minutes into last week's meeting.
Next up, we have Matya, and then Kathy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hi, yes. My name is Matya Schachter. I'm a 13-year resident of Cambridge. I moved to this country as a teenager, and I would like to point out that out of support for the Arabs in the region, and particularly the Arabs living in Israel, the only country where Arabs are able to participate in free and fair elections, the only country where Arabs are able to participate in a free and independent judiciary, that it would be unfortunate for Cambridge to pass a BDS policy to prevent these Arabs from coming to Cambridge and being welcome to speak on campuses and other forums here in Cambridge just because they happen to be citizens of Israel. I think this is a huge problem for this reason and many others. And for that reason, I call on you to vote against these policy orders. Thank you very much.
We are going to Kathy and then Shlomia Lightfoot.
Kathy has not joined. Shlomia, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Shlomia Lightfoot. I'm on Amherst Street in Cambridge. I've lived and or worked in Cambridge and been part of the Cambridge Jewish community for about the last 14 years. I have lived in Israel and I have dear family there. I am proud that our city council is considering Policy Order 109. Please pass this measure. Please do not accept the argument that challenging Israel's rights abuses is anti-Semitic. This would mean that oppressing people is somehow core to Judaism. Thank you for doing what's right despite accusations. Please do not accept the argument that standing up for Palestinian human rights unfairly singles out the state of Israel. That would mean that all other human rights problems have to be solved before this particular oppressed people can speak up for their rights. Please do not accept the argument that the situation is too nuanced or complicated for BDS. Those are arguments of a force in power that doesn't want its power challenged. We need the change that BDS could bring. Please also pass Policy Order 114 for the safety and well-being of our entire community. Thank you.
We are going to go to Eva Mosley, followed by Dalia Baratz.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
I've lived and worked in Cambridge for about 35 years. And long before that, I was a refugee from Nazi Europe. So I understand why Israel exists, but there are a lot of things that Israel does that I find very hard to understand. But it does them apparently because it wants all the land with as few Palestinians on it as possible. As things stand now, Israel has traded any sense of true Jewish values, justice for all, which is what I learned as a child, has traded it for military might, the burden of controlling another people, and a reputation as a bully of its corner of the world. A boycott of HP by this Cambridge could help Israel find its soul.
Thank you for your testimony. Dalia Baratz, followed by Tomas Huggins.
Dalia, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Talia Baratz. I am both a resident and a business owner at 14 Trowbridge Street here in Cambridge. I'm here tonight to oppose Policy Order 109. This order, like many other BDS initiatives, focuses on delegitimizing Israel. BDS has been rejected by President Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and governors from all 50 states. The precedent set by passing this order will tarnish the reputation of the city of Cambridge. Should this order pass, my husband and I will consider moving out of the city as well as moving my business so as not to be associated with anything connected to or supporting BDS. I'm also a Jew and I would not feel safe in this city. Thank you for your time.
Next up, Tomas Huggins, followed by Michael Gallant.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Tomas. I live on Haverford Street in Boston, but I was a resident Cambridge for 4 years. I'm commenting today in support of Policy Order 109. I'm a Palestinian Jew. My family lived in Hebron, Palestine. We practiced Judaism for generations. We immigrated to the United States in 1938 during the revolt when Jews were being enlisted to fight against their Muslim neighbors. We did not go back when Israel was established. Anti-Semitism rises when people believe Israel speaks for the Jewish people. They do not. No one should feel comfortable with the fact that Cambridge, which claims to be a safe space, has contracts that work with and profit off of Israel's brutal military. And speaking of brutal, let's note that our country's police forces train with the Israeli military. So I want to voice my support of Policy Order 114 to implement the HART program in Cambridge to take away emergency response responsibility away from the police. Thank you for the time to speak.
Michael Gallant, followed by Hubert Murray.
Hi, my name is Michael Gallant. While I now live in Washington, D.C., I was a resident of Cambridge for a number of years. I speak to you today in 3 capacities. 1, as a current foreign policy professional, 2, as a Jew, and 3, as a former resident. It is in all 3 of these roles that I strongly urge the Council to vote yes on Policy Order 109. First, as a foreign policy professional, I want to fully put to rest the insidious talking point that the oppression of Palestinians is somehow too complex to take a stance on. It does not take a PhD to recognize apartheid, nor to act against it. Second, I speak to you as a Jew. It is in my name, in the name of my family, that the opponents of this measure slander it as anti-Semitic. They do not speak for us. It is because of, not in spite of my Judaism, that I support this measure. Finally, I speak to you as a former resident. Cambridge strives to live up to certain values, diversity, equality, empowerment. If these laudable goals are to be more than empty words, now is the time to live them out. Cambridge funds are already complicit in apartheid. You can't stay neutral on a moving train. Our choice tonight is whether to dig our heels into the wrong side of history or live out Cambridge's values and stand on the side of justice. Vote yes on Policy Orders 109 and 114.
Thank you. Hubert Murray, followed by Edward Golden.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Hubert Murray. I live at 204 Erie Street. These remarks supplement my testimony of May 17th in support of Policy Order 109. I wish to read into the record words of Omar Barghouti, a Palestinian co-founder of the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Movement. Quote, when corporations profit from providing goods or services that enable Israel to maintain its regime of occupation and apartheid, they are complicit in Israel's crimes against Palestinians. This complicity generates an ethical responsibility for citizens to act to prevent their tax money and those who speak in their name from being a partner in Israel's relentless attempts to turn Gaza and other Palestinian ghettos into zones of non-being, unquote. To suggest the non-violent strategy of BDS is anti-Semitic is intellectually disingenuous, and as the proud son of a lawyer who worked on behalf of Jews in Lithuania in the 1930s, I find it personally insulting. As a Cambridge resident,
Thank you, Hubert. Edward Golden, followed by Hadar Ari.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Edward Golden. I live just across the border in Watertown and do a lot of political organizing in Cambridge. I'm speaking in favor of Resolution 109, and specifically I want to address this talking point that boycotting HP is somehow a dodge and a direct attack on Israel. This is not true. Although Cambridge does do a lot of business indirectly with HP through a subcontract through WB Mason. The assistant city mayor for finance bought at least several or stocked several city buildings with printers from Hewlett Packard, as well as sheet paper from them as well. Therefore, provisions of computers or printers for different models will not be permitted, as part of the text would eliminate those buying. Indeed, we know from members.
Read for your testimony. Hadar Ben, followed by David Miller.
Hadar has joined. David Miller, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm not a Cambridge resident, but I speak here in support of policy orders 109 and 114. I want to address statements that both sides are equally to blame because of Hamas. Indigenous people resisting racist settler violence have historically responded in kind. This has been true in the Americas, Ireland, Algeria, and South Africa. We don't have to approve of such tactics, but recognize why they happen. Noteworthy in the case of the Palestinian resistance is not that some use force, but rather that so many have continued to put their faith in the nonviolent tactic of BDS, even in the face of so much unwillingness from members of the international community to respond to their call. Avoiding divisiveness and polarization at all costs is a lousy political principle. Respond to Palestinian calls for peace and justice by passing policy orders 109 and 114. Thank you.
Alina Zhu, followed by Stephanie Grand.
Alina, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Alina, are you there? Can we go to Stephanie Grand and then come back to Lena?
Sorry about that. Stephanie is not on. Dara Bayer, please go ahead. You have the floor.
My name is Dara Bayer, and I live at 97 Hewlett Street in Boston. I grew up in Cambridge, and I am here as a Black Cambridgian to advocate for the city to invest in the HART program proposal, Policy Order 114, and to divest from companies that contribute to harming our siblings in Palestine, as outlined in Policy Order 109. These policy orders is deeply connected in that Black and Palestinian people share a long history of oppression, resistance, and solidarity, and these are two efforts that move toward our liberation on a local level. The HART program proposal was born from a collective, transparent, community-based process that has involved all different stakeholders and concretely reimagines community safety out carceral systems. The City Council unanimously voted to reimagine public safety through Policy Order 149 in June of 2020. This is what the HART program does, and it does it from the bottom up, unlike the Public Safety Task Force, which has not had a transparent process. We also must ensure that we are not complicit in the oppression of people in other parts of the world who are also fighting for their freedom and self-determination, which means not doing business with companies like HP who support the infrastructure.
For your testimony. Yarden Katz, followed by Farah Ramanbaksh.
Hello, my name is Yarden Katz, and I'm a resident at 29 Otis Street. I'm here to express strong support for Policy Orders 109 and 114. I speak as a Jewish citizen of the state of Israel, a state premised on white supremacy. The Israeli occupation forces rely on technologies built in part by HP to police Palestinians. That is why Cambridge must divest from HP. The city must also review all its other contracts because all Israeli crimes are enabled by the US. The US has long supported regimes that resemble itself. In US cities, the police are an occupying force that criminalize and extract wealth from the poor and non-white. Therefore, it's crucial to have alternatives to policing, such as the HEART program, put forward by the Black Response with community input. This must take resources away from policing and invest in communities. By passing both these policies, this would be a step towards demilitarizing our city. Thank you.
Lena is next.
Hi, my name is Alina Shu and I live at 10 Soden Street. I'm here in support of Policy Order 109. In 2017, I visited the West Bank and got a sense of how living under occupation and systemic state violence strips people of their dignity, opportunity, basic freedoms of movement, and freedoms from violence. In the words of one of the folks that we met, Palestinians live a chronic trauma under occupation. A group of students in Gaza who we met via Skype described Gaza as the world's largest open-air prison. They noted that the US and the UK initially considered Nelson Mandela a terrorist. It took over 30 years for indictment from South Africa to become mainstream, but eventually it did. In their words, their only hope was international solidarity, similar to what people showed to South Africa. And as Desmond Tutu said, reconciliation and dialogue in South Africa came only after the end of apartheid, not before. I hope the city of Cambridge will show Palestine the solidarity it deserves and end its complicity in apartheid against Palestinians. Thank you.
Farah Ravenbach, you have the floor.
Hi, hello, my name is Farah and I was a long-term resident of Cambridge for more than 25 years and a former peace commissioner and raised my child there. First, I want to thank City Council for allowing me to explain why I think that I'm speaking in support of 109 to cut Hewlett Packard and any of the companies that, any company's products that profiting is really apartheid. I'm old enough to remember progressive City Council resolution to stop investing in companies that profited from apartheid in South Africa. That is why we defeated South Africa, and we do that to defeat the apartheid system in Israel. And that's not anti-Semitic for people that are claiming this anti-Semitic. And we want this boycott to continue to contribute to making a society where an all Palestinian woman with cancer would not have to wait for long hours in different Israeli checkpoints in order before getting treatment.
Thank you, Farah. Next, we have Gabriel Dardick. Gabriel, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Gabriel Dardick, and I'm a Mexican student at Harvard University. I'm speaking today to voice my opposition to Policy Order 109. I've always been proud to live in Cambridge, a city that has spoken the truth whether it was popular or not. So I'm appalled to find out that City Council is debating a solution that is absurd on its face, and which I oppose for three main reasons. First, the claim that Israel is an apartheid state is an outrageous slander. Arabs in Israel serve in the parliament, in the court, and Israel protects everyone's human rights regardless of national origin. Second, the proposal completely distorts the context of current events. It mentions the Israeli airstrikes in Gaza without mentioning their reason: self-defense against thousands of rockets fired at civilians by Hamas, a terrorist organization. Finally, why is our ally Israel being singled out? Where's the call to boycott Chinese slave labor products? Where's the call to boycott Hamas, which has repeatedly called for the destruction of Israel and murder of innocent civilians? Don't let Cambridge become associated with hate and misinformation. I urge you to vote against this bill and stand with our Jews.
Hamza, thank you. Is next, followed by Noor Abu Rabia.
Thank you for the chance to speak today. My name is Shireen Hamza, and I've lived or worked in Cambridge for the last years. I want to urge the City Council of Cambridge to vote yes on Policy Orders 109 and 114 to sever business ties with companies like HP, which supply technologies for the collection of biometric data used to surveil, incarcerate, terrorize, and ethnically cleanse racialized peoples of all religions in Israel and occupied Palestine. Churches as well as mosques have been attacked by the IDF as well as right-wing settlers repeatedly this year. HP Technologies are literally the tools of oppression used by the military in the US and in Israel. As a historian of science, I'm deeply troubled that our taxes are funding technologies of racial oppression here and abroad. As a Muslim, I also deeply empathize with all of the folks here today who have voiced fear of their access being shared and of racial profiling. And I want to voice that this is not an anti-Semitic move.
Thank you, Shireen. Followed next by Noor, and then Asif Ravach.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nora Abdullah, and I live on Brookline Street. I want to urge the City Council to vote yes on Policy Order Number 109 and divest in companies like HP and others who are complicit with Israel and their ethnic cleansing of Palestine. I'd like to reiterate that supporting and backing of the Palestinian people is not anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism is being weaponized to avoid criticism of Israel. It is important not to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. We're asking to stop the support of oppression and settler colonialism. If we continue business dealings with companies like HP, we're complicit in violating human rights. We're telling the world that Cantabrigians are okay with ethnic cleansing, genocide, and apartheid. I'd also like to throw my support behind Policy Order Number 114. I believe that Cambridge should implement the HARP program that would allow alternative response teams to policing. The plight of Palestinians and Black and brown the same. The same oppression that affects Palestinians affected Black and brown communities here in America. Implementing HARP would create a safer space and community for the marginalized members here in Cambridge. We can actually save Black Lives Matter. We have to show it. Let's lead by example and pass policy numbers 109 and 114 and make us.
Next up, Asif Ravach, followed by David Beagle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Dear council members, my name is Asaf Ravach. I live in Cambridge, Infernal Drive, with my wife and young kids. I also work here in Cambridge. I oppose 109 and 129. I grew up in Israel. I was going to tell you all about it, about friends blown to bits by Hamas suicide bombers, about rockets fired at my family. But since last Monday, there were hundreds of attacks against Jews here in the US in a single week. Singling out Israel leads to more attacks on Jews. It's simple. Singling out Israel leads to more attacks on Jews. Why are you importing the conflict here? Where are your calls for our safety? My family and I no longer feel safe here, and these proposals are to blame. Please stop supporting BDS. Drop 109 and 129, and keep us safe from racial and religious hatred here in Cambridge. Thank you.
David Spiegel, followed by Marilyn Myers.
David has not joined. Marilyn Myers, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Hi, my name is, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Myers and I'm a student at MIT. According to the US State Department, holding Israel to a double standard is legally anti-Semitic. The fact that the Cambridge City Council is considering boycotting Israel and not considering boycotting China is completely anti-Semitic. My great-grandparents were survivors of the Holocaust, which started with anti-Semitic legislation. They came to the United States because the United States was founded on the principles of giving religious spirited groups safety here. They wanted me to have the opportunity to have privileges like going to MIT that I have now. How can I and all of us be a part of this? We know how this story goes. Don't be complicit. Thank you.
Next up is Daniel Mangubi, followed by Lena Habash.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I am part of the Cambridge Jewish community, currently living in Somerville, speaking against Policy Order 109. I am the son of an Egyptian Jewish refugee. My uncle, who was born in Egypt, was held in an Egyptian concentration camp for 3 years, where other Egyptian Jewish prisoners like him were tortured and humiliated. After surviving the trauma, my uncle arrived not as a colonizer, but as a refugee in Israel, and like millions of other Jewish refugees from across the Middle East and the world, has built a new life there. My family's in Egypt is what inspired me to spend time serving as a data analyst for a public defender, and why I support POR 114 while opposing POR 109. I'm a critic of many Israeli government policies and a supporter of Palestinian human rights. However, the BDS movement, which opposes a two-state solution, will only strengthen radical anti-peace elements in Israeli and Palestinian societies. I urge the City Council to oppose Policy Order 109.
Lana Habash, followed by Rabbi Jen Queen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Lana Habash. I'm a Cambridge resident on Columbia Street for 14 Palestinian. I strongly support Order 109 and Order 114. You received overwhelming testimony that HP provides the IT infrastructure for racist entities that target Palestinians, Brown, and Indigenous people. The primary people against Order 109 have been Israel's supporters. In their testimony, they don't deny the racist system of identity cards and checkpoints, the bombing of Palestinian hospitals and schools. They don't deny HP's involvement in the prison industrial complex that targets Black people, or its involvement in ICE deportation of immigrant families. Instead, they talk about their right to unilateral war, that we should not defend our communities when they steal our land and water and bomb us, that they feel upset or unsafe when people organize against their racism. This is white supremacist behavior. You have the chance to remove money out of racist infrastructure and into non-carceral community safety that limits the reach of peace. There's only one question. Will you side with white supremacy or will you side with us? Vote yes on 109 and 114.
We were going to Jen Queen, followed by Jonathan Seelig.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Amazing. My name is Rabbi Jen Queen. I work and live in Cambridge on Sherman Street. I am appalled by the Israeli occupation of Palestine and the actions of the Israeli military and government both this past week and the loss of life and livelihood of all too many Palestinians for far too long. Nonetheless, I urge the City Council to oppose Policy Order 109. Jewish tradition and my unity organizer have taught me that real sustainable change can only happen through engagement, through dialogue and relationship building. That when we see injustice and the harms that it causes, we must take active part in the healing process. Policy Order 109, as are all BDS initiatives, is a disengagement strategy, one that runs counter to proven effective organizing strategies and would legitimize the dangerous double standard to which Israel is held, to which we hold no other nation, having to burn bridges in communities like ours around the world when we should be building them. And while many of us understand the difference between anti-Semitism and opposition of Israel's actions, many who don't.
Thank you, Rabbi. Jonathan Seelig, followed by Alex Ahmed.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Seelig. I moved to Cambridge 25 years ago and have lived in West Cambridge for the past 10 years. I have co-founded 2 technology companies in Cambridge, Akamai and Ridge. Both companies have operations in Cambridge and in Israel. Both companies employ Jews, Arabs, Christians, and atheists. I support the Palestinian right to self-determination, and I support Israel's right to exist and to defend herself. I do not agree with all of the policies of Israel, the Palestinians, the US, or Cambridge, and I vehemently oppose Resolution 109. This boycott and divestiture initiative will do nothing to help the Palestinian cause. Even worse, it will discourage dialogue and peaceful resolution. It will only embolden forces of hate on both sides of the conflict, in Israel, the Palestinian territories, and here at home. I do not want to see the city where I live, work, and raise my children, a city admired for its critical thinking, take a complex issue and embrace a one-sided, ideological, simplistic non-solution. Thank you.
We're going to go to Alex Ahmed, followed by Sarah Bolnick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Ahmed. I'm a researcher in the Department of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon University, and I was a previous research fellow at Harvard. I urge the Council to vote in favor of both Policy Orders 109 and 114. BDS is a nonviolent tactic to put pressure on specific companies such as HP to uphold international law and respect Palestinian human rights. HP provides essential services to the Israeli military. These technologies are built specifically to enable a regime of apartheid and discrimination in Israeli prisons and in Palestine. The discriminatory treatment that Israel subjects the Palestinian people to would not be possible without a way to track and categorize them, which is what HP's technology enables them to do. It would not bring out Israel to call this out. Violations of human rights occur elsewhere in the world, and Hewlett-Packard is essential to them. Hewlett-Packard has sold computer systems to the NSA and to ICE. We need to stop that and divest from HP. Please vote yes.
We are going to Sarah Bolnick, followed by Eric Helbstrom.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a junior at Harvard College. I support Palestinian human rights, and I support Israeli human rights. That is why I urge council members to reject policy order number 109 to boycott HP. This legislation has been linked to BDS, whose goal is not to change Israeli policies, but to pressure Israel until it ceases to exist. Indeed, BDS founders have stated explicitly that the state of Israel cannot exist at all. I expect that the city of Cambridge would reject this policy in order to further its commitment to uphold global justice and the humanitarian rights of all. It is also no wonder that the president and governors of all 50 states reject BDS, and why BDS campaigns have been linked to the rise in anti-Semitic attacks. Furthermore, if the council members see a problem with HP, they should understand that Cambridge currently has no contract with HP, making this whole resolution performative anti-Israelism. I urge council members to reject policy order number 109. Thank you.
Eric Helmstrom, followed by Sophie Zacharias.
Hello, my name is Eric. I live at 183 River Street, and I'm a grad student at MIT. I'm here to urge the City Council to pass both policy order number 109 and 114. I urge the City Council not to look away from the unacceptable deluge of milice and mob violence by the Israeli state against Palestinians. I urge the City Council to see what Israel's own human rights organization, Alum, has finally acknowledged, that the continuing policies of Palestinian disenfranchisement across historic Palestine constitute a singular system of apartheid. I urge the City Council to understand that before, during, and after these so-called flare-ups, that what remains constant is the siege of Gaza, that the evictions and the racist laws and the military occupation continue as they have for decades, upheld with the diplomatic cover and material support of this country's government. HP has directly profited from the provision of computational resources which uphold the biometric checkpoint system that limits the freedom of movement of Palestinians. I therefore implore you to unanimously pass Policy Order 109 to hold Israel to the same standard that we have aimed to hold Saudi Arabia and South Africa to in previous resolutions. Place the material cost on corporate sponsors of apartheid. Thank you.
Sophie, yes, followed by Michael Lewis Gordon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Baratz, and I live on Prospect Street. I'm here today to urge the City Council to support both Policy Order 109 and Policy Order 114. Last heard about the over 99% conviction rate in the Israeli military courts where Palestinians are tried. I want to address another aspect of the Israeli prison system that speaks to its invalidity as having anything remotely to do with justice, and that is the practice of administrative detention, which is when prisoners are held for an indefinite amount of time without official charges or trials. When I say indefinite, this can mean years, and this is a regular ingrained practice in the Israeli prison system, and it's illegal under international law. Out of the 4,400 Palestinians in prison, 430 of them are in administrative detention. And these numbers are only rising due to the current mass imprisonment scheme that is going on.
Okay, for your testimony. We are going to Michael Lewis Gordon, followed by Jeffrey Barber.
Hi there. My name is Michael Lewis Gordon. I live in Cambridgeport. I'm a Jewish American. I've spent a lot of time in Israel, spent some time traveling to the West Bank, Palestinian territories. So I've been very fortunate to be able to travel around the area and spend a year of my life there. I've observed is that the IDF under Netanyahu's leadership has been conducting an occupation activities that appear by design to encourage hopeless frustration and radicalized violence from Palestinians who would otherwise be innocent. And this is aiding to further crystallize Israel's distrust of Arabs. It is also justifying the country's security measures. I voiced my support for policy number 129 to endorse HR 2590. I oppose policy number 109 in that BDS's campaign goal includes ending Israel's occupation.
Michael, for your testimony. Jeffrey Barber, followed by Amro Doden.
Jeffrey and Amro have not joined. Nafis Hassan, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Ahead.
Hi, my name is Nafis Hassan. I am not a resident of Cambridge, but I am here in solidarity with Palestinians worldwide and my comrades at BDS Boston and the Democratic Socialists of America. I am also actively organizing in Cambridge, as Councillor Sabrina Wheeler can attest, in 2019 against the Everso substation across from an elementary school. I would like to point out two things. One is that while we cannot reduce attacks to statistics, I'd just like to point out that majority of anti-Semitic attacks have been carried out by far-right white supremacists, according to the 2019 Anti-Defamation League report. Over the last decades, right-wing extremists have been responsible for more than 75% of extremist-related murders in this country. I'd also like to point out that BDS activists in Cambridge and in Boston area have put their bodies on the line when the neo-Nazis have come marching into Boston and the greater Boston area, and they've actually encountered police brutality, which is why I also support
Thank you
policy.
for your testimony. We are going to go to Joel Greenberg, followed by Andreen Breton Carbanu.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Joel Greenberg on Prospect Street. I'm a Jewish Cantabrigian grandson to Holocaust survivors, here to talk about Palestine, heart, and liberation. I believe that it's actually pretty simple to stop buying printers from a company that facilitates an American-approved open-air death camp. The majority of American Jews oppose the Israeli government's actions, representing a secular outpost of failed American hegemony. Given that the past 2 weeks saw the IDF-level hospitals, schools, a Gaza that housed the global media and murdered 65 children, conflating the Israeli apartheid state with Jewish identity is itself an act of anti-Semitism. Stop. Jewish people can look to recent history to see our own use in science experiments by an authoritarian regime of war. In the present day, Israel's democracy denies the colonized access to clean water, the vaccine, and any chance at dignified life. Thank you.
Next up, Andrea Gann, followed by Rio Fisher.
Andrianne has not joined. Rio Fisher, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Rio Fisher and I reside at 20 Ship Avenue in Medford. I graduated from MIT's School of Architecture with a focus in history, theory, and criticism. It is with the experience and knowledge I gained from the international community at MIT that I encourage Cambridge to vote yes on PO 109 and PO 114. History teaches us that the importance of justice and equity lies not only as a moral imperative, but also as a practical reality. If Cambridge is to remain as a global leader in academics and knowledge production, it must demonstrate willingness to defend human rights, especially among those least able to defend themselves. Cambridge has a storied history fighting injustices from apartheid South Africa to the federal immigration policy and MIT's support of Saudi violence against Yemen. I urge the Council to continue this brave tradition by upholding human rights in both Policy Order 109 and 114.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Benjamin Gamage, followed by Joshua Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for adjourning the discussion to today so I have a chance to speak. My name is Benjamin Gamage. I live at 331 Harvard Street in Cambridge. And let me first of all say that I am Jewish. I am proud to be Jewish, and I am proud to be a member of the Cambridge Jewish community, which is completely central to my life in Cambridge. But that has no relation to the relevant facts that Human Rights Watch has just released a 200-page report conclusively documenting Israeli crimes of apartheid and the fact that Israel was founded on an violent and sustained campaign of ethnic cleansing that continues to this day in Sheikh Jarrah, in Silwan, in Yaffo, and throughout Israel and Palestine. It has been difficult to talk about this because Israel is so central to the American imperial project in the Middle East, but the tide is finally turning. We know from the South African example the role that the international community has to play. I am proud to live here in a city that was a trendsetter in that fight in the 1970s and 80s, and I hope that Cambridge will continue to fight for justice and human rights today.
Next up, Joshua Brown, followed by Ashera Gendelman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for your time. My name is Josh Brown at 872 Mass Ave. I've been a resident of Cambridge for the past 5 years and work as a resident pediatrician and child psychiatrist. I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors. I'm a proud American and a proud Jew. I've lived in Israel for 2 years and have close family and friends who live there. I strongly oppose Policy Order 109 and Resolution 129. BDS has been rejected by many prominent politicians on both sides of the aisle. BDS spreads false propaganda about Israel and completely disregards that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East and the only country in the Middle East that provides equal rights for women and members of the LGBTQ community, values that our Cambridge community holds so dear. As others have pointed out, there's been a significant rise in anti-Semitic attacks on Jews throughout the world. And are Jews safe here in Cambridge? Scrutiny of Israel is at times a poor guise for anti-Semitism, and subjecting Israel to unfair double standards, including through BDS, emboldens this hatred. I urge you to oppose Policy Order 109.
Ashira Gendelman, followed by Raphael Katz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Thank you for your time. My name is Ashira Gendelman. I'm a current resident of Cambridge at 284 Harvard Street, where I live with my husband and 2 young children. As a mother, as a doctor, as a kind neighbor, I wholeheartedly oppose order and resolution. Furthermore, for the first time in 8 years, in the 8 years that I have lived here, I feel unwelcome, and I am concerned for my family's safety and for my community's safety here in Cambridge. After last week's attempt at Jewish disenfranchisement, the anti-Semitic goals of the BDS movement echo loud and clear. Please do not damage the reputation of our great city of Cambridge. Hate has no home here. Thank you.
Raphael Katz, followed by Ursula Mengubi.
Hi, my name is Rafi Katz, and I am a Cambridge resident opposed to resolutions 129 and 109. Council members, you are here today to vote in the interest of Cambridge residents, but your votes will resonate through the nation all the way to DC. Think about this for a moment. How is it in the residents' interest to feel unsafe by having one state, the Jewish state, singled out? By upholding BDS, you are saying that it is okay for Jews and Israelis to feel unsafe. Just as Cambridge chooses to divest, my family and friends can choose to divest from Cambridge. Fees, I will be spending my money in places where I feel safe and invest in places I feel safe and welcome. I am not to register my marriage.
Ursula Mengubi, followed by Jeffrey Melnick.
Ursula has not joined. Jeffrey Melnick, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm Jeff Melnick of Reed Street. I've lived in Cambridge for over 30 years, raised 2 children here. I'm here to speak in favor of Policy Order 109 and 114. I'm an American Jew, and I'm here speaking as an American Jew and also as a historian of American Jewish life. One of my books is about the lynching of a Jewish man, Leo Frank, in 1950. Anti-Semitism very seriously as a historian and as a Jew. But Jews across the United States like me have joined the BDS movement because we understand it is our duty to do so. As a historian, I know that boycotts work. One of the first major boycotts of the 20th century was a boycott organized by Jewish women in New York City in 1902 against the price-rigging meat trust. It was a smashing success. Boycotts work. Madam Mayor, I urge you and the council to support Policy Order 109. It is a small but consequential way for us to demonstrate our solidarity with the Palestinian people in their struggle against an apartheid regime and for their own liberation. Thank you.
Next up, JP Delgado Galdamez, followed by Uriam Ravech.
JP does not appear to have in the Zoom. Oriam Rivak, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Dear council members, my name is Oriam Rivak. I live on Fernald Drive in Cambridge. I grew up in Israel and chose to do my postdoctoral studies here at home. and I'm here today to speak against Policy 109 and 129. 35% of the doctors in Israel are Arabs, almost twice their percentage in the population. I had Palestinian colleagues in my university studying their PhD with me. Israel is not an apartheid state, far from it. My heart goes out to the people of Gaza, but as your heart goes out to my parents, to my brother who had to flee his house from Hamas rockets last week, you take one side of the story here in Cambridge because our toll is smaller, because our country protects us and not using us as human shields. Cambridge is for science, for collaboration, for existence. Please don't import the conflict here. Thank you.
Dalia Savaya, followed by Gerald Bergman.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Dalia. I'm a Palestinian living here in Central Square for the past 7 years. I'm a Palestinian. I grew up in the States. My parents came here after the war of 1967, faced with ethnic cleansing and discrimination. There's so many things that make this situation so crystal clear, not least of which is the fact that some of the most robust voices and organizations that are for BDS and for this resolution are Jewish and Israeli. I as a Palestinian, I look to many Israeli resources like B'Tselem, Zochrot, and here in the United States, I look to Jewish Voice for Peace as resources in a chorus of resources and voices that comprise the Palestine solidarity.